It was a big step in the right direction this weekend for Inter Miami in the Supporters Shield race. Maybe another piece of silverware will be in that cabinet soon after the win over Cincinnati. We break it all down here on the Inter Miami Weekly Show. And welcome back here to Chase Stadium alongside the Arsenal great Kieran Gibbs. I'm Joe Malfa. Kieran, hold on, wait. It's been, okay, we're getting there. This is the point of the game where Luis Suarez scored against Cincinnati in the match against this past Saturday. It was that quick. It was 29 seconds into that match that it was 1-0 Inter Miami. So it's a team now that is just clicking in every single way. I mentioned that this piece of silverware might be on its way in the Supporters Shield. That Leagues Cup trophy is awfully lonely right now, but now 8 points clear with 8 to go over Cincinnati in the Eastern Conference and atop MLS.
That's it, Joe. It was the big game that everyone was waiting for, and they didn't disappoint, did they? It was a great performance, and I think that they took care of business early on. They landed 2 big blows from the main man himself at the moment, Luis Suarez, and you have to give the team a huge amount of credit for lasting the rest of the game with 10 men. It's not easy against a team like Cincinnati. A great effort from them to do that and see out without conceding. That will give them a lot of confidence. I do think there's a big warning sign, with going down to 10 men. I think the discipline has to change if we're to go that step further. This was a big step, but in order to go and lift a trophy, you have to have an almost perfect performance, and the discipline is for me could be the Achilles heel, which could let them down. So that's one thing, that's one area that I want them to improve. But like you said, a huge step forward for Inter Miami in an incredible season so far. And
we'll come back to what you mentioned there as the Achilles heel in just a moment. We'll take a look at the highlights first, because again, it happened fast, it happened furious. It was 29 seconds in, and Luis Suarez got the opening goal, and it only took 5 more minutes after that. But the crowd was rocking, and they barely had time to get in their seats before it was already 1-0.
It was just such a positive start, forward movements, give and goes. I mean, look how Luis Suarez just adjusts. He's so proactive. He's just ahead of everyone else on the pitch, and that's why he gets this goal. The way he moves his feet, he sets his first touch down, and it's a classic Luis Suarez goal, a complete poacher and a great finish.
And then he pounces, the group does, on this giveaway here. I'm not sure what this was intended for. It was that back pass to the center back, but then clear giveaway, just back and forth, and Suarez finishes again.
Yeah, and again, look how he reacts. He lifts the ball over the defender's head, but watch him straight after. He's gone. He makes his run. He's so direct. He's decisive. And it's just too late for any defender to stop him. And he gets a little luck with the deflection, but it's just fantastic striker play.
So this starts as the Luis Suarez show with those 2 goals in 6 minutes. Then it very quickly becomes the Drake Callender show. It's just save after save. Inter Miami could have added on to that 2-0 lead early. It almost felt like that Orlando game. Remember, all the way back to March, where I think it was 4-5-0. It ended up, but the goals came early, they came fast, they came furious, and then Drake Callender was doing a whole lot of this.
Yeah, and Cincinnati had their chances, obviously, but you have to give all the remaining boys on the field credit. The way they sat in 2 banks of 4, they tried their hardest to keep the pressure off of Drake, and he came up with incredible saves when needed to. But I thought that the way that they sat in, and Sergio Busquets, especially the way he communicated with his team and dictated the play at the back. He kept Yannick Bright close to him, and I thought that the defensive display in the second half was, shows how far this team have come. That really isn't easy to do, by the way, to play with 10 men in a big game like that. When you know that Cincinnati's going to be throwing men forward and trying to get back into the game. That's a great testament to Inter Miami defensively, because we've seen them this year struggle at times. This was not the case in this game.
Right. And the 3 names that we kind of focus on there, Drake Callender, Sergio Busquets, and Luis Suarez, of course, those 3 all end up in the team of the match day in MLS this week. You had Suarez as the player of the match day as well. And a little bit of history for Inter Miami. Suarez now 3 times a player of the match day. Messi has already been named 3-time player of the match day. The first combo in MLS history to have 2 players 3 times team of the match, or player of the match day rather, all from the same club. So we knew coming into this season that duo would provide some special moments. because of the way that international duty and injuries have overlapped, maybe they haven't been together as much as we thought, but in the moments where they've been asked to shine, both Messi and Suarez answer the bell every single time.
They have. They've delivered, and I think, if you would have said even this time last year that Inter Miami in general would be having a season like they're having, you still would have thought it was, maybe a stretch too far, but it really is happening. They're putting in the numbers. They're delivering for the club week in, week out. It's just been incredible to see. It's, this could go down as one of the seasons, in many, many years. We'll look back at this as Inter Miami's season. It feels that way, at the moment, the way things are shaping up, the way they're outscoring everyone. They're scoring many different types of goals. They've gone through patches of disappointment, but they've bounced back really quickly. They're showing all of the signs of, an iconic season.
There's no way else to put it. I mean, that's the best summation of it. You mentioned some of those numbers. You could go through them. They've already set the club record in wins, already in points, already in goals, and with that, they've already clinched a playoff spot, the third fastest team in a 34-match MLS season to clinch a playoff spot. We really haven't even talked about that yet. We don't want to diminish clinching the playoffs. That's nothing to sneeze at, but it's not the end goal, right? The end goal is to lift the trophy on December 7th, before then, lifting the supporter shield right here at Chase Stadium in front of everybody going into that postseason. So that's the ultimate goal, but you can't lose sight of the little objectives and checkpoints along the way, and it was probably something they spoke about, I would imagine, in the locker room afterwards, that, hey, playoff spots clinched, but that's just step one of a few-step process here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there'll be a big sigh of relief, obviously, just for making the playoffs. I think every team will go through that when they make the playoffs. I think for them now, there's two ways that they can go about it. They can, they can kind of rest on their laurels and take their foot off the gas a little bit, or they can use this as confidence that they are the best team in the league, and possibly the whole of the MLS East and West. They're showing that at the moment with the season that they're having, and can they use that now and really go and push on? Take the Eastern Conference and use that as psychologically over other teams in the league that might think they have a shot of beating them in the final.
We mentioned that it's between Cincinnati, but there's also Columbus still in the background as well. Columbus is double-digit points behind. They do have a couple of games in hand, and there is a head-to-head between Inter Miami and Columbus coming up in the first week of October. So it's not done and dusted, but Kieran, you look at the numbers. I mean, the Supporter Shield winner is going to come from the Eastern Conference. I think we're pretty certain of that based on the way the numbers shake out. 8 points clear of Cincy with 8 games to play. And again, Columbus is there, double-digit points. They have a couple of games in hand, and there is a head-to-head. But even if Columbus picks up the maximum points with the games in hand and wins head-to-head, that only gets them within 2 points of Inter Miami. So it's starting to look more and more like the passageway to MLS Cup is going to run through Chase Stadium.
That's the way. That's what we're hoping for. I mean, listen, there's still a long way to go. Football has a funny way of throwing curveballs at you, but if they keep this form up, I mean, even without the likes of Messi in the team, I think the way that they've performed over the last couple of months has been outstanding. I'm really impressed with, from front to back of how individually they've performed and collectively, they look like a team that have been playing together for years actually, and I think we forget the fact that this is still a very very young side, but also still a side that's getting to know each other. Sometimes it takes a long time to have a season like they're having, and they're doing it in such quick succession that it feels like we are expecting it now, which of course we are because they have so many great players, but it's one thing expecting it, but it's another thing to go and actually do it, and I'm really impressed of what they've produced so far this season.
I'm glad you put it that way. It's only been 13 months. That's it. 13 months since this whole project began at the start of the Leagues Cup last year. Here we are at the end of August now, getting into September. So it's 13 months. This team hasn't been together for that long, and they're on the brink of accomplishing some pretty historic things. You mentioned from front to back. At the back is where we have Drake Callender, and he's one of the best goalkeepers in the league. He's also maybe on the brink of becoming a bestseller because he's done something pretty special with teammate DeAndre Yedlin, our Inter Miami goalkeeper. Drake Callender emphasizes giving back and extending his influence beyond the pitch through community engagement. As part of the club's back-to-school initiative, Callender donated copies of his children's book, X Marks the Spot, to students at the Foundation of Community Assistance and Leadership. X Marks the Spot, co-written with DeAndre Yedlin, as mentioned, introduces mindfulness and the importance of nature for mental health. So those are all the things that Drake Callender doing off the field as well, in addition to everything he's doing on the field. It's great to continue seeing, as again, talk about only 13 months since this whole project began. It's only 4, almost 5 years since the club began, and to see that connection already fostered with the community is outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, if there was anything to typify, Drake's personality, it would be something like this. And DeAndre as well. I had the pleasure of playing with them both. Incredible characters, with them steering the narrative of these books, you can rest assured that it will be very positive, inspiring and mindful content in there, which is great for the youth. So I'm really happy to see this. I was actually gifted one of the books for my son. I haven't read it yet, but I'm excited to read it to my son. Yes.
Awesome. And again, that's a good way to not that we need an excuse, but it's a good excuse to talk more about Drake on the field as well, because you saw everything he did in the highlights against Cincy. You and I were chatting before we sat down to do the show today. He's at a point now where, I mean, it's hard to argue shot-stopping wise that he's the top or one of the top in the league, and this is a league now that includes Hugo Lloris and so many top-class goalkeepers. And you look at Zach Steffen in Colorado and his spot in the national team maybe, and Matt Turner now, of course, over in England as the starter for the U.S., and now Drake Callender. All those guys have something in common. It's that maybe now and again you'll get a mistake playing out of the back with the feet, but shot-stopping wise, top-notch, and Drake is right there with the best of them.
For me, he's been the best goalkeeper in the league this year. I think that he has progressed tremendously since his debut, to be honest, which wasn't that long ago. Someone who's still very young, but who has the temperament to do anything that he wants in the game, because he has so much control over his mind that nothing phases him. It seems like he's in a complete different state when he's on the pitch, and actually when he's off the pitch as well. And I think that's why he's performing so well, because he's managed to get control of his thoughts, and everything for him is positive when he's on the pitch. And when we've seen him make a mistake, we see him in the next game bounce back, and he'll pick up a man of the match award. He's just the way to do that as a performer is probably the most difficult thing to do, and he's got complete control of that. So for me, he's going to have a long career in the game, touch wood, and he's proven to be an absolute top class goalkeeper.
No doubt. And before we transition to Chicago and the match coming up this weekend on the road at Soldier Field, one thing I want to go back to, Achilles heel. You mentioned in the highlights that the discipline in a way with some of the red cards picked up has been an Achilles heel, and how do they correct that? I think something that is a good sign that issue will be corrected. A few months back, I guess this season's all blending together, probably a couple of months back, what we talked about as the Achilles heel for the group was conceding quickly. It was that stretch of games where they went at Kansas City, at New England, and a bunch of games in that stretch where we were conceding in the first 10 minutes, still coming back to win all of those games, but it was starting to become an issue. Achilles heel was tossed around. When you play a better team, can you still rebound that way? Now you look at the last 7 games in all competitions, Leagues Cup and MLS play, 6 of the last 7 we have scored in the first 10 minutes, and in some of those cases we've scored multiple times in the first 10 minutes. So we flipped that from an Achilles heel to a strength. It stands to reason that Tata Martino can get that discipline in the right direction going to the playoffs as well. Yeah,
I think that is probably going to become one of his main focuses, just because it is that important. Sometimes you can get away with it in games like we did the other night, where it's just a brilliant defensive display from the Romanian boys on the field, but it doesn't always work like that.
So looking to finish the season strong, but also looking to finish August strong, of course, and that's going to be a road game in Chicago against the Fire. Right now, sitting tied at the bottom of the Eastern Conference with a couple of different teams on 26 points. Very much struggling. They just allowed Xherdan Shaqiri to leave the group, go back home to Switzerland, and start anew there with Basel, where he started his career. So they're a club that's in flux. They're letting players go. They're bringing players up from the second team in the academy to start giving them looks near the bottom. all of that is to say, for Miami, who just beat Chicago 2-1 before the Leagues Cup break, this should be 3 more points, but there's nothing you could take for granted.
No, these teams always worry me, actually, sometimes more than the teams that are kind of sitting mid-table or pushing for playoffs, because these teams, sometimes they lose hope and they play without fear, and that actually works counter. And they try new things, and sometimes it comes off. So they have to be really concentrated. That that when you come across a team that's playing so low, they always can have the ability to perform and turn it on. So definitely a time to keep concentrated, and like I said, use the confidence that they have from securing a playoff spot and the great season that they're having. Let's keep using that for this final push.
Now coming up on the end here, 8 games remaining in the regular season. It'll be 7 when we're back next week on the Inter Miami Weekly Show. Hopefully it's another 3 points in the bag, and that 8-point gap becomes wider at the top of the Eastern Conference, battling for the Supporters Shield, hopefully getting to the ultimate goal of MLS Cup on December 7th, and we hope that you are with us every step of the way. Make sure that you like and subscribe here on YouTube so you can be with us for every edition of the Inter Miami Weekly Show.